Hello, welcome to the Lefty Knits Podcast. My name is Molly, and this is episode number 12. Hey there, welcome or welcome back to the Lefty Knits channel. Here on this channel, I share all things knitting related, things I've been working on recently, ideas that I have for the future, inspirations, things that I've knit in the past, any knitting related thing that I'm feeling particularly inspired to talk about. If that sounds like something you're into, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. I release new videos every Friday. So today I have a podcast episode for you. I don't have too much new stuff to share, so this probably won't be too long. And honestly, that's probably a good thing because it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Yeah, we don't usually get weather like that. I have the window closed with the blinds all the way open over there so that it's bright enough for me to do this. But yeah, it's a little bit toasty, so I don't want to spend too much time talking. Luckily, I have my Dunkin' here. Like I said, I live in the Bay Area now, but I lived in Boston for 8 years, and while I was there, I developed a deep and abiding love for Dunkin' Donuts. All I want in life is a giant iced coffee for relatively cheap. We don't have that many Dunkins out here, but there's a few peppering some of the Bay Area suburbs, and my boyfriend had an appointment in one of them this morning, and he was kind enough to bring me back some iced coffee, which is definitely very needed in this weather. So today I have a completely new finished object that you've never seen before. I have some movement on some old whips, a new whip in its infancy, and no acquisitions, which I'm pretty happy about, although it's only been 2 weeks since my last episode, but still, any amount of time during which I'm not buying yarn is a win. I have some kind of complicated ideas for a very new whip and some leftover ideas that I think I'll probably talk about a little bit instead. I plan to wear something different today, but given the heat, I'm wearing my Ripple Camisole by Jessie Mae. I made it in I'm almost certain it's a discontinued yarn, Cascade Heritage Silk Paints, which is 85% merino, 15% silk, and a fingering weight yarn. I made this over 3 years ago, quite a while ago. I don't necessarily get too much wear out of it, but it's very comfy. I think at first it was really tight in the armholes and in the straps, like the underarms were like basically riding up quite high. But a block mostly solved that, so it's pretty comfy. I made it a little shorter than the pattern calls for and a little shorter than I probably would have chosen, but because this is a bottom-up pattern, I wasn't sure if I would run out of yarn. I have made this pattern again. I believe I made it when I was very early in my podcast last year, and I made it in a Farmer's Daughter Fibers silk merino single ply blend. I'll link that episode so that you can see me talk about it. I made it a little bit longer that time, and I might have even made a bigger size. I didn't record anywhere that I can find, at least, which size I made of this, but I probably could have at least stood to make the straps a little bit longer, and I think that would have solved a lot of my fit problems is a strong word, but it would have fit a little bit better. I think this is the first thing I knit where I really understood the magic of blocking, because it was quite tight when I cast it off. When I put it on the first time, I was like, I don't know if I can wear this. I wore it a couple times, it did loosen up a little, but then I still wanted it to be just a little bit looser, so I pretty aggressively blocked the straps, blocked the underarms, and after that it fit a lot better. So I think this was the first thing that clued me in, oh, I should probably consider blocking everything. I know people have varying opinions about blocking, but I've been fully converted. I block almost every swatch I make now. I swatch fully 4 by 4 inches or so, a little bigger maybe. I measure the gauge before, I measure the gauge after. I'm like a model knitter now in that respect. And I do recommend it because I think it does kind of avoid some of the problems you might have. Anyway, this is fun. I really love the colors. I bought it on clearance from Webs. I think the colors worked up really nicely. Nothing pooled too much. I like the pattern. I've knit it again. I would knit it a third time if I had the right thing. I think it's a good way to use up one skein of sort of special fingering weight yarn. When I buy a single skein of fingering that's like hand-dyed and fancy, sometimes it's things that aren't appropriate for socks, like the single ply merino silk blend by Farmer's Daughter Fibers that I made my other version in. But even if something is sock appropriate, I feel like socks get worn out much more quickly than a lot of things that you're wearing because they're on your feet. They're touching the floor and the ground all the time. They're touching the inside of your shoes. There's lots of friction on them. And in a way, like, I appreciate using a product. I would gladly mend my socks, but I think it's nice to have things that are a little less susceptible to wear. By wear, I mean like wear and tear, not wearing something. So something like a KAL, spoiler alert, something like a KAL, something like a cami, maybe a contrast color for color work. Those are all things that I tend to prefer to consider for a special skein of yarn, and that's something that I would definitely consider in terms of a special indie dyed skein and maybe making this project again. So let's go ahead and talk about my finished object. Like I said, I have one finished object, and it's something I have not talked about on the pod at all. This is my Slip Snuggle cowl by Casey Herlihy. I've made designs by Casey before. She is a formerly local knitwear designer and dyer. I actually bought yarn from her, which I featured last podcast episode. She's since moved away, which is very sad for us. We are lucky to have some of her hand-dyed yarn in stock at Black Squirrel Berkeley, which I will link. I haven't sewn in my ends on this yet. I just literally took this off the blocking mats to talk about it right now, and I know that it can be controversial, like sew in ends first or last. I often tend to sew in my ends after I block because I'm worried about having to frog and reknit certain parts and, oh, it's upside down. I'm worried about having to frog and reknit certain parts and have that be like just a difficult thing to do if I sew in the ends first. So I started this pattern in May. I'd cast off, I think, some of my simpler projects and maybe only had more complicated projects. I don't quite remember, but either way, I just wanted something simple and small that I could knit without having to think too much, which was a questionable move because there is this like slipped stitch pattern, so the rounds change a little bit, and I did have to frog back a few times because I like messed it up. But I wanted something small. I wanted something that wasn't too hard to think about, but was still interesting. And the color work on this definitely fits the bill there. So in terms of yarn, I used a discontinued yarn from Cloudborn. So this is the Cloudborn Highland DK. It's 100% wool, and it's 164 yards per 50 gram ball, I believe. When I bought this, it was on sale on yarn.com, as a lot of my yarn was quite a few years ago and sometimes still is. This is Dusty Coral. This is Mauve, and this is Gray Heather. I think I was more or less intending to make perhaps even a Jessie Mae crop. Like the Little Secret crop is a DK weight one, I think. But these are non-superwash yarns. Highland wool is, a little bit more rustic than merino. This is not super like scratchy, but it's not super soft either. And I think like even wearing this in hot weather sometimes is a little bit itchy. So I think wearing something that is like a non-merino full non-superwash wool just like wouldn't really work for me in the summer. So I've been looking for something else to do with these yarns since. I've been on like a little bit of a KAL kick over the last year or so. I don't knit like too many, but I think like shawls, wraps, KALs have kind of come back into my consciousness as I've looked for things to do with single special skeins. Sometimes if it's something that has a little bit more yardage, but it's not something that I want to make a sweater out of, I'll think about something like a wrap or a shawl. So I've been kind of on a neckwear journey this year, and this was a pattern that I did really like, and given that I had 3 colors of this yarn and I was looking for something to do with it, and this didn't take up too much yardage, I decided that I would go for this one. And I'm really happy with it. It's, you know, it's not super soft, so I'm a little bit worried about how it will wear next to my neck, but given that it is a like slip stitch DK weight cowl, I think it's probably more appropriate for some of the colder weather that we have here in the Bay Area, or moderately cold weather in places like Alabama, where I anticipate visiting in the winter. This is a fun pattern. I used 53 grams of yarn total for it. I used a little bit more of the gray because I used it for the ribbing on each side. I think the pattern calls for more yarn than that, so as always, your mileage may vary in terms of how much yarn you need for a project. I would definitely go by the pattern estimates. I wouldn't like wing it too badly, but I could definitely see like maybe making these stripes in slightly different colors and doing a little bit of stash busting with this pattern. This had been on hold since May, when I was doing all the work to finish my PhD. I went on vacation. I got COVID on vacation and had a little bit of a knitting hiatus as I got home and recovered, and was dealing with some of the lingering after effects of having COVID. Luckily, it wasn't too severe of a case, but I did have some fatigue, some respiratory symptoms, etc., that I hadn't quite recovered from. So I put this down, plus it was pretty deep summer when I got back, and even though for us here in the Bay Area, our warmest months aren't September or October, I feel much more inspired during the summer months when it's late and stuff to knit things that are more summery. Starting October 1st, Casey began a knit along for all of her patterns. I believe it runs through the end of November, maybe? I will link her Instagram post down below if you're interested in joining. She has a lot of great cowl and shawl patterns. Many of them are super great for stash busting. I have been looking in my stash trying to figure out what I might want to make next for this knit along, but seeing all that discourse, I joined her Discord channel as well. I've felt really excited to sort of work on some of her patterns, and this one was sitting half finished in one of my drawers, so I pulled it out and I did the last bit of knitting in like probably an afternoon and an evening. So this is really fast, it's very comfy. I think the like slipped stitch stripy detail looks really nice, and I'm really excited for weather that's a little bit cooler so that I can start wearing it. Let's move on to the whips. My whips are not too different. This first one is my, oh god, I have to knit some twisted ribs, so let me just finish this row first and then I'll hold it up. This is a big one. As I was saying, while I was distracted by trying to make sure that I did my twisted rib right, this is the Sunday Morning Wrap by Espace Tricot, or Elisa de Fruscia is the pattern maker, and it was made for Espace Tricot to go with a discontinued yarn of theirs that was called Sunday Morning, hence the name, I assume, Sunday Morning Wrap. I am knitting this with Bucksnort Alpaca Ranch yarn. I'm on to my last ball. I had 4 hanks of this originally, and this is from a small ranch in northern Alabama, pretty close to Huntsville, where my boyfriend is from, and I've talked about this a good amount. The colorway is called Shooter. I believe Shooter is also the name of the alpaca that this yarn came from. They have, it seems, based on the listings on the internet, on the place that I got it, which no longer exist, I think that there's different alpacas that are different colors, and all the yarns are some sort of natural color based on the alpaca that they came from. This yarn is pretty nice, very, I would say pretty rustic. It's like a 2-ply. It's kind of thick and thin in some places, and this pattern is free. It is essentially, it's pretty simple. Basically, you do these sections of twisted rib followed by stockinette, followed by a twisted rib, followed by stockinette, and you do that 5 times, which I have now done. And then you knit at the very end a few repeats. The pattern has 3 repeats written in of the twisted rib section. And my plan is to knit the twisted rib section until I run out of this yarn. I have a few, like 2 30-inch cables, I think, in this from my Chowgu set that I've connected together, because I was starting the final rib section, the extra long rib section, and I had to redo it 3 times because I dropped a stitch and it took me a while to find it. I put it on these long needles to try to find it. It's actually almost harder to knit this way because it's just so like heavy and there's so much cable. It's almost easier to knit it when it's bunched up on a 30-inch cable plus the 4-inch tips that I have. But it's been like this for now. After I went back and picked up the drop stitch, I knit it to the end and I messed up the rib pattern. So I hadn't actually finished that section after dealing with some of the rib issues last night, but now I have the rib pattern all established. It's correct, and I should be able to probably not quite fly through the end of this because each row is like 400 stitches. It takes a long time, especially when you're doing twisted purl on the wrong side. That said, I'm getting to the point where it's not that fun to knit anymore for me. Like the rows taking so long, the like heaviness of the project as I'm working it. It's also just not very portable anymore. It was kind of like a good portable mindless project when I was on maybe the second of the 5 repeats, but I took it to a friend's house yesterday to try to make some progress on it, and I did, but it's just a commitment to bring with me. So this has kind of been my focus for the last week or so, and I think it'll be my focus until I finish it, so hopefully that's pretty soon. Mark my words, this will be done by the next time I record a podcast episode. I will be able to show it to you in its final form, hopefully its blocked final form. I'm excited to have this for when it's cold out. Right now, it's a little bit gross to think about because it's 90 degrees outside, like I said, but it'll be really nice for winter. My next whip is the Lodestar by Kirsten Rubetta. It is from Pom Pom Magazine, issue 37, I believe. I have talked about this pattern many times on this podcast. It's honestly, it's funny like going back and looking at some of my old videos and seeing how many times I talked about this being one of my plans. A fall plan, a spring plan, another fall plan, like, and it's finally on my needles, which is really exciting. I feel very good about that, but it has been a little bit of a slog. So last time I showed it to you, I think I had just frogged all of it and restarted and done most or all of the ribbing. And now I have a good portion of the yoke done, so that's good. I'm making this out of Valley Yarns Northfield, which is a merino alpaca and silk blend in a DK weight. I will link the yarn down below. I use the colorway Sea Spray. The lace has definitely caused me some struggles. It's just been a little bit difficult to make sure that I'm doing it properly, but I think, fingers crossed, I finally got it to the point where I am understanding the pattern really well. I see how the lace portions are supposed to look. I'm looking over here to make sure it's in frame. All right. It has these triangles. And after I recorded 2 weeks ago, I had to restart the lace. So I was able to only frog back up to the ribbing at least, which was helpful because I missed part of the pattern. So there's like different portions of the yoke. First, there's the part where, I'll try to show this. There's a part where you're increasing, including increasing the size of the lace panels as you make the neck bigger. You're also making the lace panels bigger. So you're creating like almost a diamond shape with the lace. It goes, first the lace goes out with like sort of raglan-esque lines coming down. And then you create a point with the lace. So the lace shrinks in size into a point at the end to make that like star pattern. And you're increasing along the stockinette side, like making these stockinette panels in between the lace panels. I hope that makes sense. First, for the part where you're making these stockinette panels or these lace panels wider, I only did the repeat once, and then it's a four round repeat, and I did it one time, and then you do rows 1 through 3 one more time. But I missed the part in the pattern where it says that you're supposed to repeat those, 2, 3, 4 more times, those 4 rows, depending on the size that you're making. So I only repeated them once, and then I went to count my stitches as I was setting up to create the pointed part of the star, and I was realizing that I did not have anywhere near enough stitches, so I had to frog back. And I did feel like I was getting the sense, I'm like, this feels really short. Like this first part of the star feels really short, which it was. I have this time been counting my stitches very carefully, been making sure that I have the same number of stitches in each of these stockinette panels. I've been working pretty hard to make sure that I'm on the right track. And it can be hard, as I mentioned with this pattern. You're moving these markers as you go, as you make these sections, the stockinette sections bigger and the star pattern smaller, pointier. And it's a little bit like I'm getting to the point where I'm low on stitches to make the points. That's a little bit scary, but I should be right on track. I'm almost done with this. I think I have the right number of stitches. I've been counting a good amount. I've been visually able now to see the star pattern really well and to be able to tell, like, oh, I missed a yarn over here, and kind of pick it back up. So it's going well. I don't want to jinx it, but I think I should be able to split for sleeves pretty soon. Hopefully next time I show this to you, it will finally look like a real sweater instead of just an assortment of lace panels in a yoke. I think the good news is that each time I have had to frog this and restart it, it's then easier to do it the next time. I get the way that the pattern works. I understand how the lace pattern should feel and should look as I'm knitting it, like where the yarn overs should be, where the decreases should be, where the added stitches should be. So that is definitely helping. And if I were to have to restart, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but I would probably have to set it down for a little bit. So hopefully you're gonna see something exciting and good next time and see this with some good progress. Although this is on hold, I think, until I finish my Sunday morning wrap, just because I really want that out of the way. So my final whip is a Musselburgh hat by Solitude. I'm making it in wool stock light, which is a 100% wool fingering weight yarn. I believe it's a Highland wool single ply. I've talked about wanting to make this before. This is at the very, very, very beginning stages, and it's not that interesting to show, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about my plans. I literally just cast this on, and I just have the little disappearing loop cast on and a couple, like 1 or 2 rows of steep increases. So this is from my boyfriend. His birthday is in November, our anniversary is in November, and money isn't like super free flowing right now, so I'd love to be able to give this to him for his birthday and or our anniversary in a couple weeks. I think it would be a good supplement to whatever I'm purchasing for those occasions as well. He knows it's coming and he'll watch this, but that's fine. Because he's been a very like active participant in the process of making this hat, because I really want it to be something that he'll like, and he has like pretty strong opinions about what he's looking for, which is great. I've made him another Musselburgh. It was a little bit long. It's very thick because it's I think it was like a DK-ish weight yarn, and so the folded double DK weight is pretty heavy duty and not super appropriate for much of the winter here in the Bay Area. It's also an alpaca and merino blend, so it's just a very like, it's a hat, and he doesn't necessarily need something that intense. He mentioned that he wanted a ribbed hat. Well, he has a hat that he likes that's like a store-bought, a commercial hat. And it looks like it has almost like a twisted rib pattern. I showed him some ribbed hats. I showed him one twisted rib hat, and he was like, that's what I'm looking for. So I'm gonna try to make the Musselburgh, but in twisted rib. Now, there's a few, like, problems is a strong word, but there's a few things that I'm going to modify. Now, I know Nitty Natty has made it, the Musselburgh, in rib a couple times, or like half in rib. So I've been kind of looking at her pictures on her Ravelry project pages, trying to figure out how she did it, especially what the increase line looks like. Because there's basically like 4, I don't want to, like, they're not seams. There's like 8 increase points in the hat, and they're around like centered 4 points. I'll actually show you on my my finished Musselburgh. So this is a Musselburgh I made out of Jada Woo Designs yarn for myself. I've talked about this quite a few times. And essentially there's these points where the hat, the increases are centered around these radiating like points of the hat. I think what I'd like to try to do is, like, this one I think is maybe 3 stitches in between, but I'd like to make it a 1 stitch like center to the increase. Like, I want there to be 1 stitch in between the increases. My plan is to probably follow the increase schedule of the Musselburgh, but to have one centered stitch, like 1 stitch that's the center, and do the increases around that 1 stitch in 4 spots instead of doing it around 2 or 3 stitches in 4 spots. I'm a little bit worried, while I'm keeping a twisted rib pattern, of course. I'm a little bit worried about that. I don't know exactly how well it's gonna work, because I think that he would like the look of like a smaller point where the increases are centered around. So this is this is going to be interesting. I've only knit the Musselburgh in terms of top-down hats. He does want it double wide. I'm considering doing like stockinette on the inside maybe, but I'll have to think about it. And obviously I have quite a bit of twisted rib to do first. I mean, I don't see any reason why this shouldn't work. I might do a slipped stitch detail. I'm trying to think exactly how I want to do this, but I think it'll be like an interesting challenge. And unfortunately, it will probably make this a little less portable for the foreseeable future. I was hoping that this would be like a mindless stockinette project, but once we talked again and he was like, actually, I think I said I wanted a ribbed hat. And I was like, yeah, I think you did too. It's going to be a little less easy, but that's okay. My Lodestar will be easy soon, and I don't go anywhere where I need things to be mega portable. So we'll figure it out. I just hope that I don't have to go all the way back to the beginning, because getting here was really hard with the double pointed needles. It's just very fiddly and hard to keep track of which needle is supposed to go where. It probably took me a good like hour to do the disappearing loop cast on and then to do the first round of this because my needles were just so hopelessly messed up. I'm excited to see how it goes, and I'm excited to show you how this is going to end up, because I think it'll be an interesting experiment. My boyfriend's head is between the adult medium and the adult large, closer to the adult large. And I'm gonna knit the adult large because I'm a little worried about how stretchy the twisted rib is gonna be. I tend to think of twisted rib as being a little less stretchy than regular rib, though probably not less stretchy than stockinette. And I know the hat has some negative ease written in, so I think all of that will be fine. But yeah, if you've modded the Musselburgh yourself, I'd love to chat about it, because I'm like entering into this a little bit more daunted than I was expecting to be. I was kind of expecting this to be like a chill, casual project, and then I inflicted this upon myself. And I could follow like a regular ribbed hat pattern, I totally know that, but the fact that he wants it to be double thick, like that he wants it to be folded under, does just complicate things a little bit, which is why I'm kind of thinking that I'll start at least with the Musselburgh pattern as a jumping off point. Hopefully all of that made sense. I don't know if any of that made sense. I'm just talking about my thoughts on this hat. I'm excited to take you on the journey of modding this Musselburgh, or maybe picking a new hat pattern. We'll see. I've been talking way longer than I expected to. All right, that's all that I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed seeing my projects. I'd love to hear what you're knitting now. Are you preparing for fall? I know in a lot of places it's actually starting to get cooler, as opposed to here where we're having our annual October heat wave. So maybe it feels a little bit more appropriate to knit something for cooler weather. Embrace the new season. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me today, seeing what I have been working on. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a like down below and consider subscribing to my channel. As I said, I release videos every Friday about knitting related things. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining me. Bye.